Well, hello there and welcome to the Travels with Geordie. If this is your first visit, my name is Peter Knowles and I live on this classic wooden motor cruiser here in Victoria, British Columbia, along with the loving memory of my pup Geordie, all the while fixing it up for some pretty ambitious cruising. If that's the sort of thing that you might find interesting, please consider sticking around and subscribing. I'd love to have you. Well, it's been so great to get back downtown Victoria, and I've really enjoyed being here, but we're going to jump back in time and scoot back up to Genoa Bay to carry on with that rear bulkhead on Zephyrus, and I think I've made some great headway, but I also have some questions for you. Mine is going to be just as bad. Anyway, let's jump back in time and pick up where we left off. As always, I'd like to send a big shout out to all of you who watch the show and enjoy the show, and as well my supporters on PayPal and Patreon. Thanks so much. Cheers. And I'm back up to the shed and back to MV Zephyrus, carrying on with, well, you know, this I'm so pleased with. Next steps obviously is to finish cleaning all this up and then coat this with git rot, which is a thin epoxy that will seal it, and then I'm going to have to fill it and fair it. The other thing I need to do is bond this loose edge of the curved section of the cabin top here, which in some places you can hear is actually hollow because the wood on the inside is not in good shape. So I need to get enough of something in there, and I haven't quite decided which material it's going to be yet. And then bond that down so then I can feather it out, and when the new glass goes on can deal with all that. I've considered 2 or 3 different techniques for how I'm going to set this up, and I'll think about it just a little bit longer before I share it with you, but it's been driving me crazy, different approaches to doing this and the complications that go with each of them. Anyway, time to change, start to make some sticky stuff, and advance this. Alright, so after a little more dental work, you can see that there's a major problem in here. Keeping this all sealed and cascading water out of here is going to be a problem into the future. And you can see where the problem was out here as well. There just isn't a big enough gap here to be able to deal with properly. So I'm going to enlarge this. In fact, I'm going to enlarge this slot all the way along because it just isn't big enough to actually be able to fair and seal a proper seal in against all of that. So I'm going to start by using a hole saw. All right, then I've mixed up some git rot, which I think, as I mentioned, this is a funny left-handed, right-handed thing. You probably can't see what I'm doing here. Anyway, this is a thin epoxy that is formulated to soak in and stop rot in its tracks. Okay, as I wait for that to kick, I'm going to get geared up to bond this down, which again I showed you is this little bit of the curved section that is hanging loose now and is in pretty bad shape. But I need to provide a good solid base as far in as I possibly can and get it bonded firmly to the cabin top so that I can then cut the edge off and start to imagine feathering in the new fiberglass into it, which is not going to be fun. But anyway, first thing, get it solid. Before that, I want to clean out any crud that's under here, and to do that, I'm going to put the vacuum in reverse and just blow out all the junk under here. Okay, so what are we going to bond this down with? Well, you've had a moment to think about it. I suppose I have lots of options, but I'm going to go with construction adhesive, basically urethane, liquid nails, etc. I happen to like this brand and this line of this brand. It's good stuff. There's a couple of reasons. One, I need a lot of material because there's quite a large void in behind here. 2, I need to be able to pump it in as deep as possible, and this nice long nozzle will make that particularly easy, and it would be quite complex to get thickened epoxy way in there, even if I could get it into some sort of syringe. Yes, you can buy empty caulking tubes to put thickened epoxy in. I'm just not going to bother with all that. And here we go. Just pack this right under here, and we're off to the races. Okay, then to clamp it, I'm basically just going to take these pieces of strapping and squish it down and screw it to the side of the cabin here, cabin side. But I want to do like a test push here to see if I've actually got enough adhesive in there. Let's see, and it's just starting to ooze out. Actually, that's just perfect. I love it, I love it, I love it. Because there's a bit of a curve to this, I want to do this in 3 separate pieces. Give this a push here. Oh yeah. And one back here. See how that goes. Oh yeah, beauty. Couple of taps for goodwill. Excellent. I am actually really pleased with that. Just wipe out the excess. Beauty. And good morning, this will be all set up. Let's get these clamps off of here. Oh yeah, nice and solid. Okay, so I've mixed up some pretty thick peanut butter consistency filler to start filling these voids. Not much fun, but it's got to be done. I'm going to do this in layers because I don't want to be filling too thick a void at any one time. That'll do for now on this side. I'll go do the other side. You don't need to watch. Okay, well, we'll wait for that to kick. It's time to remove this cap rail, handrail, whatever we're going to call this piece up here. As you can see, it was completely rotten at this end and it's in bad shape. We have to take out the bungs and get out the screws inside. My technique for doing this is to drill a hole, and that's basically a nice tight fit for a wood screw. And in this case, I'm just using a deck screw, and put the screw in through the bung, and the pressure of the tip of the screw against the old screw inside will pull the bung out, if you're lucky. If not, a little heat will definitely help because it'll soften whatever glue, epoxy, etc. was bonding that on. I find this works a lot of the time. Now, these are standard screws in here, and rusty, and I'm not too confident I'm going to be able to get them out with a screwdriver, but let's have a look. Not that one. How is this one even working? Well, I got this one. These are all going to be miserable. I'm going to try your hole saw method. So as this piece is sacrificial, there's no harm using the hole saw method. So here I have a nice little 5/8 hole saw with the pilot drill removed, and I'll be able to hand guide these right over here. Hey! Neat, neat, neat. Love you guys. Okay, back on the outside, you can see here where I used the hole saw to begin to enlarge this slot down at the forward end here. So now I got to go through the process of marking off and cutting the rest of this slot. And from what I can sort of tell, the thickness of this piece of 3/4 inch strapping is just about perfect by the time I have the marker thickness put on it. Right like that. Excellent. You know, I've been playing with which saw to make this cut with. Obviously, it's not a circular saw because of the guide of this. It's not a jigsaw because it's too close. I don't want to hand cut it, so I'm going to use my cordless little mini recip. So I'm actually just going to use that as my line, which will be very close to what I have marked here already. So let's see how this starts to cut. I'll have to start below and work my way up. And let's see. You know, in retrospect, that's not really enough clearance. So what I'm going to do is use this little bit of mahogany as a trim guide, and that will give me the clearance I'm looking for. Beauty. All right, that's much better. Oh, yeah. Okay, so here we have the original Sill, and you can see the pretty inside of it, and the rabbet in it to carry the actual bulkhead, and the heads of the carriage bolts that bolted it to the cabin top, and here's the remnants of the old canvas decking that was underneath it. So I'm just going to slice this up at a opportune spot so that I can get an accurate measurement off it so I can start to make another one. Let's cut it about here again, watching out for nails. Okay, so there's a nice cross section of our sill, and I think I have some material just suitable for that. Okay, some of you will remember this little beauty piece of sapella mahogany. That is the one that I dropped in the ocean a couple of episodes ago. Anyway, it's almost full 2-inch. Which is very, very, very close to what I need in this direction. And of course I can rip anything I want out of it in the other direction. And in fact, I'm going to do it a little bit wider. If you imagine the way this was originally set up, this is inside the boat, this is outside the boat, the bulkhead sat in here. Well, here, let me get a little prop. Okay, so here's the bulkhead sitting in here. Now this is actually 3/4 material, but you'll get the idea, and it'll help me illustrate what I'm going to do in a minute. Originally, the canvas deck was underneath this sill, and it would have been sealed along this edge with some sort of sealant. And when they cut off the canvas deck at this line, they replaced it with fiberglass, and they sealed it against this edge, well, rather unsuccessfully, actually. So one possibility would be to run the new fiberglass underneath the sill as it was originally done and do a really good job of sealing it at this line. However, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to set the sill directly on the deck, and I'm going to fiberglass up and over and into the rabbet so that I've created an absolute flashing detail here where water cannot possibly climb up and underneath here. And therefore, when I sit the new bulkhead in, it'll be sitting in on top of the fiberglass. This will all be nicely coved and eased fiberglass. As a result, I'm going to make this rabbet a little bit deeper so that I can put a nice radius on it to make it much easier to bring that fiberglass up and over into here. And I think that's going to make a great detail. Now, the truth is, when I get to the ends and I come up against the side cabin sides, it's going to be a bit fussy. And as I have next to no experience working with fiberglass, well, who knows? I'll show you a drawing of this at a certain point. It'll probably make it all a little bit clearer. I have some ripping to do. Oh, okay then. Let's try our first big rip. I can't say that was a fun rip. And I have to do it again because I need the two side pieces. Whee! Well, it's a little lighter now. Okay. Well, that's the worst of it. Oh, so lovely, 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 lovely. Whenever I do a really big, clean rip like this, I like to save as much of the sawdust as possible for future wood flour, for adding to filler and things where I want it to match the mahogany. There we go. That'll keep me going for a little while. Okay, here's a rough representation of the sill. So this is the rabbet cut out, and these are the two eased corners. So I've just set it up to make it simple. This is 1 inch, and this is 1 inch. So basically I can just run it through the table saw with 1 inch left, cutting through there, and it'll make that cut roughly 1 inch deep. And then I can swing it around and cut it there, which will be effectively there, which will match it up. Of course, this is longer than 1 inch, so I'll drop the blade at that point, raise the blade, excuse me. Okay, before I put too much more work into this sill, I'm really curious to know whether or not I'm going to be able to bend it into place just with force, or whether or not I'm going to have to steam bend it. So let's go get a couple of clamps, and see if that will bend down to the relatively gradual curve of the deck. Okay, I put my clamps in reverse here, and let's see how far this will go. It wouldn't be a huge project to steam these, but it would be a lot simpler if I didn't have to. Oh, it's going to be no problem. Fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. All right, before I can get too excited about how easily that was to bend into place, I did want to confirm some alignment things. This is actually the straightest piece of wood I can put my hand on. It's very, very straight. And nothing here is exactly square. Of course, it's a boat. What do we expect? But trying to find the best compromise between square and twisted, because I don't want to twist the new bulkhead. But there's definitely a misalignment over on this side in this corner that I need to accommodate one way or another. Okay, now putting the square on here isn't all that relevant, because I know the boat is tipping, the cabin top is tipping downhill as it goes aft. But if I put this little shim in here and use my handy dandy iPhone level, I can see that I am darn close to, well, level with the world. Is that level with the boat? I don't know. But at least I want something that's consistent from port to starboard across here. And I want this gap to remain the same as I move along, and that will tell me whether or not this upper beam is actually out of alignment. Well, in my enthusiasm to cut the rabbet, I made a minor mistake. This is the sill for the bottom, and this is the sill for the side. And well, you can see the problem here. Yes, you might say, okay, Peter, miter them both, but the problem was I don't have wood long enough to go all the way from inside of the cabin sides to inside the cabin sides. So I needed this piece to be able to fill in that gap, and I needed to route this rabbet in here as a blind rabbet. In other words, stopping here so that it would connect up and this would be solid down here. So no problem, I just have to make a couple more of these. And that's rotor table work. So let's put this beast back together. I'm going to do this work with this massive flush cutter, which amazingly has a 1/4 inch spindle on it. So not necessarily accurate, but I've put some rough marks on how this cutout has to go. So basically everything that's marked needs to be removed, and this just keeps me from making some tragic inside-out mistake. Now all I have to do is make the mirror image for the other side and swing into there. Okay. All right, so I'm right on that mark. To make life easier, I'm just gonna make a tiny mark right on here so I can stop at the same spot. And here we go, absolutely perfectly flush. Excellent. Now I've left a little bit of material at the bottom because, as I mentioned, this has to be cut on a slight angle to correspond to the curve of the deck, but it's very, very slight. Well, I'm glad to say these are done, because that was definitely the much safer one, working away from you. Very nice. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So this is about the best I can do to determine this angle. It'll certainly be more accurate than leaving it at 90 degrees. Right there. Whoa, that's not much. There we go. Okay, so down at this end I have to create a little slot relief cut for the wires. Very annoying to have to do this, but that's life. Okay, so I've cut the two side pieces to fit, and now it's about cutting the base of the sill to line up with these, because of course it's coming downhill and these are vertical, so there's a slight angle there as well. So I'm gonna just clamp it in place and scribe it. Okay, so I just dropped this in to represent the side block, and off we go. Can't quite get through because of the blade, but I easily have my alignment there. Let's go to the other side. Okay, let's finish that cut. This is actually a compound miter because of course the deck is curved, but the cabin sides are vertical. However, the cabin sides are also pulling in just a little bit. Well, to be fair, they're pulling in a little bit this way. So in fact, this is actually slightly less than 90. It's all so subtle, but that's why scribing it in place like that was the best way to do that. There we go. And the other one. Beauty. Okay, so I have temporarily attached the whole gubbins together, and I'm just going to go trowel fit it, and if it all fits, we'll take it apart and epoxy it. Okay, so it's certainly not going to fit until it is bent down into place. Absolutely perfect. I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, let's get it out without breaking it. And good morning, back at it. This morning I'm going to start to route out all the eased over edges on here. I've done just a little preliminary sanding, just enough to make sure that it's smooth enough for the bearing on the rudder to not put little bumps and therefore little bumps in the edge I put on. Okay, pretty straightforward stuff. This is, if you can visualize it, this is the outside, and this is where the bulkhead is going to sit in, and this eased edge here will be the eased edge to ease bringing the fiberglass up and into the rabbet. Maybe. More on that in a bit. Okay, so that's that side done. Now for the pretty side. Now, a small change of plan here. Let me show you. Okay, imagine you're looking at this from the inside, you're in the boat, this is the bulkhead, and there's a window there. More on the window soon. But the window now comes fairly close to the side of the cabin side. However, there's a light right here. And I'm going to place that light on a piece of 3/4 inch mahogany, which is a 1/4 inch thinner than this. So I don't want to put the full ease over on this, or it'll be lost inside this material. So in fact, I'm going to stop the large ease over 6 inches away from here, and then just do a soft little ease over here just as a highlight, which will work a lot nicer with the extra piece of wood I'm going to put in here. Just to explain why I'm not routing right around the corner. Just a little sanding to break the sharp edge, and now the finished sanding. Well then, after a monster cleanup that is long overdue, I'm ready to head back to Victoria for a couple of days and give some thought to how this now quite extensive sill is going to be installed. I'm very happy with the sill itself, but I'm having second thoughts about how I'm going to install it vis-a-vis the fiberglass. So I'm going to jump in the truck, head back to Victoria, and talk a little bit more about how this might work. Okay, so here's the whole issue with where does the fiberglass go. So let's draw a little picture here. This is the plywood deck, and with its laminations, etc. And here is the sill, which comes in basically up and around, down, out and around and back. So originally I was going to run the fiberglass across the top of the deck, and I'd put a cove in there and up and into there, so that when I installed the new bulkhead, it would come down here, across and up, and any water would easily shed down over this fiberglass and onto the deck, and there was no chance ever of moisture getting down into basically the bedding between the sill and the cabin top. Now, there's a couple of problems with that, not the least of which, it's a lot of work, especially when you get to the corners and I have to run up around the sides of the sills. But it means another thing. In terms of maintenance, ongoing maintenance, what's going to need maintenance sooner? The sill or the fiberglass work? The problem is now the sill is glassed in, and if I ever have to do any work to this sill or change anything, it's the fiberglass that has to be redone. Whereas if I ran the fiberglass underneath the sill and assumed or was confident enough that I could seal it well enough, then the fiberglass is really just part of the cabin top, and the sill and the bulkhead are a separate structure that can be removed, rebedded, resealed, dealt with over time. It also means if there was the slightest chance of movement in this area, a crack could form here, and which means I've lost all what I've been trying to gain. So I'm looking for some input. Fiberglass straight underneath and bed the sill really well, or fiberglass up into this rabbit so that I have a continuous sort of curb of fiberglass. Anyway, looking for opinions.
Well, hello and welcome to the Travels with Geordie Beer of the Week, coming to you this week as often from beautiful downtown Victoria at the Causeway Marina. You'll notice I'm slightly closer to the Empress Hotel than I often am. This is a very, very busy weekend, and the dock I'm on is empty, so the marina has asked me if I would move back and leave some room for some transients, which I'm very happy to do. We got to jump straight to the beer. This was a gift. This is from the Collective Arts Brewery in Hamilton, Ontario, and it's a brewery that promotes artists from all over the world, and we have some interesting thing going on here for a beer called the Hazy State, and this was a gift to me from Rick Laporte, who sent me along a box of beer. Thank you ever so much, Rick. I really appreciate it. So let's try Hazy State from Collective Arts Brewing. What a perfect day. We're getting on like into the second week of October, and the weather here is just like summer. Had a fabulous week up in Genoa Bay working on Zephyrus as well. You've just watched, and that's going really well. I'm actually very, very pleased, and I'm interested to see what you all think of my question about how I install that sill. Anyway, Hazy State. Oh my gosh, that's good. It's not very hazy, it's not very sort of zingy would be the word I would use. It's just that perfect. It's like a lemonade. It's really good. Thank you ever so much, Rick. Okay, let's jump right to last week's winner of a Travels Geordie t-shirt is DNS Technologies. DNS Technologies. Get a hold of me and I'll make sure you get your shirt. Cheers. Wow, that is really good. Two new Patreons came on in the last week. I'd like to thank Gary Shearer and George Michael Oswald. Thank you very much to both of you for coming aboard and supporting the show. I really, really appreciate it. Cheers. Wow, that is awesome. Okay, that about wraps it up. Let's move along here to a word of the week for you. And the word of the week I'm going to give you this week is content. Yes, I just feel so content these days. Love being back at the harbor here. Just in a very, very good state these days. So content. You know what to do with it. See you next week. Cheers.